Hello?
What are you doing right now?
Oh, I'm just organizing my Grinch mugs. Who's this?
Do you have a landline I can call?
No, I'm a 25-year-old self-respecting man. I don't have a landline.
Okay, fine. Do you like scary movies?
Scary movies? I love scary movies. I just saw the new Scream. Let me tell you about
What?
that. Yeah,
No.
so this is a movie from the directors of Ready or Not. I don't know if you saw that, but Ready or Not was not my thing. But I was interested in this, regardless. And it's just Scream again, which is not surprising because, all of these new movies are just the same old movie, just with a new cast alongside the old cast. Stop me if you've heard this before.
The killer is a part of something in the past. This one just feels different.
But honestly, the worst part about this is the main character, and that's the most disappointing part. The main character in the original was this really strong feminist character whose choices felt like they mattered, It felt like she was doing things and she was taking matters into her own hands. She was taking her life into her own hands, and it felt like what she was doing mattered and you could understand and sympathize with her. This one is like the character is making the same expression the whole movie. She has a backstory that doesn't get super fleshed out, and she doesn't kind of make choices on her own. It kind of just feels like the script is pulling her to different set pieces. I mean, literally the climax, the climax is almost literally the script pulling her to the ending. She is in a car with some people, and then something happens, and it turns out that one of the killers set it up so that she would have to end up in a place that she would be.
Stop, please.
I don't know if that made any sense, but it just feels like this character is very passive and very boring. And honestly, that kind of affected my whole viewing of the movie, is not being able to relate to her. The biggest issue with that, though, is that it has way too many characters. There's the old characters, you've got Dewey, you've got Gale Weathers, you've got Neve Campbell, you've got these old characters alongside this new bunch of characters, the main character, her sister, her boyfriend, their group of friends, their parents, all of these people that have to have screen time. So there are like 10-minute long sections dedicated to these characters talking to each other without the main character. And when you're making a movie about a sympathetic main character, or at least you're trying to, you need more time dedicated to that sympathetic main character, and it doesn't really have it, which is, again, I think my biggest problem with it. Hold on, let me move into another room.
Shut up, I hate you.
And then there's the meta quality to it, and it just didn't work for me, just to be completely honest. The first one obviously has meta qualities. The most popular scene, the most well-known scene in the first one is the scene when one of the characters lays out the rules to a horror movie.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex.
And this movie tries to do that, just much, much worse. And the biggest problem I have with it is the fact that it doesn't get anything creative out of it. The first one is incredibly creative with its homage to Halloween. It's commenting on itself while commenting on the genre and making a pretty decent slasher movie at the same time with likable characters. This one doesn't really have any of that. It's not a homage to anything like the first one was. It's mostly a homage to itself, which I'll talk about in a minute, I guess.
Please.
But the meta quality here just didn't really work for me, because it actually reminded me of Deadpool 2 a lot, because in that, Deadpool is constantly talking about the screenwriting or the filmmaking. At one point, he says that it's just lazy writing, which has become a meme. But that doesn't mean that it's not lazy writing. Just because you comment on lazy writing doesn't mean it's not lazy, and that's what this feels like.
The longer I travel, the harder it is to control. I got 2 charges, one to get me here, one to get me home.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
So yeah, it's commenting on itself, but that doesn't necessarily make it okay to do the thing you're commenting on. There's a point when Neve Campbell's walking through the exact same house that was in the first one, that served as the setting to the climax, that serves as the setting to the climax of this one, and she tells the killers that they're being very derivative because it's the exact same house, and that's supposed to be like a comment on the fact that this is a derivative movie from the first one, and they even have moments when they're talking about the state of filmmaking in this vein, when people just want the old thing repackaged as new. They comment on that, but they're still doing it, and it doesn't exactly do anything other than that. I mean, you can still do this and comment on it, but you need to do something clever with that, and they really don't.
I've seen this movie before.
Not this movie.
That's why it feels kind of self-serving. Their characters are reacting to scenes from the original Scream movie, just repackaged as a movie called Stab, where they literally recreate scenes from Scream. There's even a point when a character is reacting to a character in Scream, reacting to a character in Halloween. But this time they look behind themselves, so it subverted your expectations, right?
You're the most annoying person ever. Go make a rant channel on YouTube.
Oh, he's gone. So I know what you must be thinking. There's gotta be a silver lining, right? And yes, there is. The silver lining here is the performances, which I think are generally really good, other than the main character, who has this kind of blank expression the whole movie, but the legacy characters, I think, do a good job. Neve Campbell does a good job. Dewey does a good job. He seems like he's off his rocker at this point, but he does a fine job. And all of the new cast does a pretty good job. And it's pretty violent, which I enjoyed. I enjoy when a horror movie isn't afraid to both kill off characters that are important, which it does, and I appreciated that, even though it comments on the fact that it did that and says, we've got stakes in this movie because we killed off characters you cared about, which is annoying, but I appreciated that they did it, and I appreciate that they throw blood around as much as they do. They even hold on shots for long periods of time with knives in people's throats and such, and I enjoyed that as well. Plus, there's this really great little dynamic between the sisters, the main character and her sister, who's the Drew Barrymore of this movie, the character that gets attacked at the start, who doesn't die this time, which subverted your expectations. They had this great little dynamic because the main character ran out on her family at a young age and abandoned her, and she feels abandoned, and they're not on great speaking terms, and she reveals this whole backstory that's really interesting. I wish they did more with it, but it is interesting, and their dynamic was probably the best part about this movie. It's the heart of the movie, and I think without that, this would be a huge disappointment and mess, but it works for the most part. They kind of abandon it near the end. They stop talking about it almost altogether. A lot of them are away from each other as well, which didn't quite work for me. I think the climax of the movie should have been the main character and her sister, not Neve Campbell running around the house pretty much alone for a lot of it.
I'll be right back.
He's dead.
If you like Scream, you're gonna watch it, and it's a fine sequel. I haven't watched any of the sequels, to be honest, so this one being the first one was a little disappointing, but I don't know. Maybe it's one of the better ones. I really have no idea. I'd give it a 4. I don't care for it. I'll never watch it again. Honestly, I probably won't think about it a week from now, but that's Scream 2022. Scream.